And you'll find it in the people at Toyota, all across America.
Support and arms are on the way. Everything is fine. We are going to be victorious.
Colonel Gaddafi and those around him must be held accountable for these acts, which violate international legal obligations and common decency. Through their actions, they have lost the legitimacy to govern. And the people of Libya have made themselves clear. It is time for Gaddafi to go, now, without further violence or delay.
There you hear Gaddafi's son and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Also in an interview today, Muammar Gaddafi tells ABC News this. The question was, will you leave Libya? He started to laugh. How come? Has anybody would leave his own homeland? Why do I leave my homeland? Why do I leave Libya? Laughing. They love me, all my people. They love me all. They will die to protect me, my people. That's Gaddafi today. Meantime, the U.S. military is moving assets into the region. As you take a look at the map, the amphibious assault ship, the USS Kearsarge, is now in the Med. The USS Mount Whitney is there. The USS Stout, believed to be there, the destroyer. The USS Enterprise is on the other side of the Suez Canal. So things are moving around Libya. Let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. Juan Williams, columnist with The Hill. And syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Charles, your thoughts on developments today?
Well, some people look at troop movements. Others look at the freezing of assets. To me, the leading indicator here with Gaddafi is the fact that his favorite nurse, from whom he's been inseparable, described in WikiLeaks as a buxom Ukrainian blonde, was evacuated to Kiev today. I'm not an expert on this, but I would say that if you're holding Gaddafi shares, that's a strong sell signal. He clearly is in trouble. He may hang on. He's got troops, clearly has control of the capital. I think what is remarkable is that the Europeans have moved so quickly to sort of almost, well, semi-recognize the rebels. The Italians have broken relations with the Gaddafi, no longer recognize him as the chief of state. The French are flying humanitarian aid into Benghazi. The British and the Germans have apparently flown airplanes into the desert to pick up evacuees. And what have we done? We're allocating a few $1 million to send AID workers to go sit on the border with Egypt and Tunisia. I think we could be a little more active. When the rebels take charge of Libya, they may not be grateful in the future, but we certainly want to be on the right side of them to the extent that we can, and establishing a relationship with them now would certainly help that.
Juan, as far as Gaddafi goes, it has that feeling of Baghdad Bob in Baghdad saying the troops are not here, but they were.
Yeah, well, I mean, clearly the man's in denial, and I don't think there's any dispute about the question of his lack of mental stability. And, you know, it's just one of these sad situations where you see a leader totally out of touch, not only with reality, but willing to lie. Because obviously he's using his military, what there is of a fragmented militia-based military, against the demonstrators, and he just lies about it. So on all those counts, it just looks like a sad ending to a guy who deserves to be gone now.
Steve, what about the call for him to be gone? We heard it from Secretary of State Clinton, but we learned about it from the president's statement in a conversation he had over the weekend in a press release, basically, of that conversation.
Right. I mean, I thought it was an odd way to put out such a significant statement. And I think you have to be very certain that you can back it up, or that you're willing to take the steps that you might need to undertake in order to push him out if you're going to actually say that. But it's of a piece with the way that they've handled, I think, this entire episode. They were late, they were slow. I mean, there's this image of the ferry bobbing in the waters off of Tripoli, which suggests, you know, a superpower, sort of helpless to do anything. Having said that, since Friday, they've made a turn, and one gets the sense that the President of the United States said, I want you to come up with every single idea that we can put forward short of military force and implement them all right away. And it seems like that's what they're doing. I would like the U.S. government to take a bigger leadership role. I mean, as Charles points out, you've got the Europeans doing this. You've got David Cameron leading the way, talking about a no-fly zone. You've now got talks about EU, NATO forces potentially going in to mollify or to pacify the situation. You know, I would hope that the United States is taking a big leadership role in those efforts.
UN ambassador, U.S. ambassador to the UN, Susan Rice, was asked today about supporting the opposition, the rebel groups, with arms or funds. She said it's too premature, that these groups need to solidify first. This is an active overthrow of a regime, or it appears that it's going to be.
You can't wait in these circumstances. I'm not sure you want to intervene militarily. I think that is a huge step, and it's not something we want to do right now when we have our troops in Afghanistan, still in Iraq. But there's no reason whatsoever why we can't be doing at least what the French are doing in Benghazi, to fly in humanitarian aid. We can do that. We're specialized in that. We can do it in a flash. We're always up behind. Ever since the unsuccessful, suppressed Iranian revolution in 2009, this administration has shown an incredible reluctance to recognize what's going on, to express itself, A, in terms of our principles, and B, in terms of our strategic interest, late on Iran, late on Egypt, and now late again on Libya.
This is just so wrong, Charles. Last week around this table, you guys were hammering President Obama. Why doesn't he do? And it's become clear now that he was looking out for the interest of America's diplomats who were still in Libya. And there was a reluctance to send in the kind of ships that Brett displayed on the map tonight, because the United States is a military superpower. We're the dominant power. You send those ships, it sends a signal to a madman, Gaddafi, who potentially could have held Americans hostage. And now that the Americans are out, there's been a clear and strong message that Gaddafi has to go, and we've given millions in humanitarian aid to help those who are being struggling in the fight against Gaddafi.
And as actually happened, the United States remains mute, inactive, and passive because it has diplomats on the ground, whereas it has, as you say, the strongest military in the world. It can extract at least as well as the British and the Germans did. And you're telling me that that sends a signal of strength? It sends a signal of
You said just a moment ago, you said just a moment ago, we have troops in Afghanistan, we have troops in Iraq. We are not going to fight every war in the world, Charles. This is about living.
That argument doesn't work.
Expressing yourself. He didn't even express himself in the first week.
And that argument doesn't work anyway, because the president went out and spoke while we had diplomats on the ground and while the ferry was bobbing in the waters. So they said we can't possibly speak and make a strong statement. Then he went out and the president spoke.
Once we had our people
and what message does it
out
send?
Libya,
what precedent
but Steve,
does it?
Didn't I just answer your question?
No, we didn't have everybody out when the president spoke. We didn't close to have everybody out.
He held himself hostage. And that's a message of weakness and irresolution that we can't.
I think it was a matter of skill
and
look at what's happened. Let the facts stand that right now Gaddafi is on his last steps.
Not because of us.
Next up, governors meeting here in Washington want changes in Medicaid.